Good morning, everyone. It is March 24th. We have our EPS long-range grumpy trade scan. Let's get into these stocks and see if we have any plays lining up. XNET has been popping up on our scan. We can see here recently it's holding above this year-to-date VWAP right here. So this is going to see if we could get we have a potential push up holding this year-to-date VWAP high with 2 days of consolidation. And we could see here on the intermediate trend, as we saw this rally up, we wanted it to pull back. It undercuts the 5-day moving average. And now we have this rally to a new high above a flat to rising 5-day. So perhaps this could be as easy as buying above 510 up in this area with a stop under 496 in this area here. 496 under this low. We got 486 underneath this low, or 475 underneath this low. It just depends on one's risk appetite. Ideally, though, watching this 510 breakout with the stop under this 496 premises, so we could see something like this, maybe back up into this previous high and back up into this 542 region daily R2. And you could see here, if this triggers and breaks this area, ideally this low of 496 will hold, and that gives us still above our 5-day. If you wanted to give it more room, this would just be above our 5-day moving average at this 486 stop. So diving into LX, we could see this had this nice gap up, and it's just been digesting these gains now, right? And it's starting to get above this prior neckline here in the pre-market. So it brings us to the intermediate time frame, which we could see this has pulled back to that 5-day moving average, and we had this anticipated what we were looking for. So perhaps now today, this is doing exactly what we wanted. Don't want to chase this gap up here in the pre-market. Let's monitor now for this little pullback into this area and get this strength so we could buy above this 1091, and then with a stop potentially under this 1062 area. So that's what we're monitoring, just for like a pullback into this 1065, 1073 to 1067 premises. Then we look for it to trade back above the daily VWAP and then trade back for the breakout of this 1094 and get back into this 1130 region, potentially 1164. So definitely keeping LX on watch for a pullback, get back above the daily VWAP. This is also gapping up above the intermediate trend currently, but it's not in a strong downtrend. It's actually already trending up. So ALHC continues to show strength. It's been on the scan, mapped out how in the past it really demonstrates how prior resistance acts as support. Prior resistance comes back in and acts as support. So this pulled back nicely to this prior VWAP that we had mapped out here. And we have a lot of jargon going on here, but ideally just showing the map, not prediction, but the map of what we could be looking for. So as we broke and pushed above this resistance line, we could have then put a stop at this 1692 for a trade back into that 17 R2. So this hit daily R2 on Friday. We're going to monitor a pullback to the 1746 area, and maybe we could get back above the daily VWAP, trade back into this prior high, and leave some into the breakout of 18. If this 1746 should fail, monitor a further downside continuation down into this 1709 premises, where this prior high VWAP, we could even slap it to this low now, which would be in the same premises in this area. So ideally, we'd be looking to see if buyers could step up here, get some strength, and feel some further upside continuation. But again, this is up. The lower risk setup isn't really presented as of right now. The train left the station. So this XERS just continues to run. It's got this big push up. So ideally, would be looking for some type of pullback. To be honest with you, not really sure how to play this with the strength in these surges. So ideally, we missed the inside day consolidation. All right, so monitor a pullback to this 3-day VWAP for a trade potentially back up into this daily VWAP. So ideally, we undercut this 2-day VWAP, come back into this 3-day VWAP. Maybe it just continues to fail. So just be careful of this one. Again, train kind of left the station. Here we have VIAV, VIAV. We had this fresh pullback to the undercut of this 50-day moving average on the daily. And we're recently rallying back into this year-to-date VWAP low. So ideally, we'd want to see a little bit more of a digestion of these gains after 11.6% and 10 bars. And if this kind of digest sets up a couple inside days, what that's going to allow to happen is this data on the 20-day moving average to start to flatten out and rise as we start to get rid of the data over the next couple trading sessions and add in new price action over here. So that will give the opportunity so we get a rally to a new high above this flat to rising 20-day and 50-day, get some consolidation, and then maybe get some upside continuation in this one. So we're monitoring a pullback to this 1147 to 1132 region. From here, looking for a bounce, potentially back into that daily VWAP. So depending on where this opens up, if this opens up here and starts to digest the gains, right, we'll be monitoring that pullback here and a potential trade back into that daily VWAP, and then look to see if we could get a reclaim above that daily VWAP to break up and get us maybe potentially back into this year-to-date VWAP high and back into this 1215 region. TGTX continues to run. On the 30-minute chart, we had gotten the pullback that we mapped out on Friday, and price got back above that 2-day VWAP, and we could see here we started to consolidate, and we traded into this daily R1 and this prior resistance, came back to the VWAP continuation later in the day for a trade into a new high a day. So I don't want to chase this after 54% in 15 trading days. So ideally, let's let this digest a little bit more or just look for lower risk opportunities. So we have RPRX had this nice little shakeout underneath the 20-day moving average, and now it's reclaiming this year-to-date VWAP high. So it's holding above that year-to-date VWAP high. Would like to see a little bit more digestion now after it's got a recent rally of almost 6% and 7 bars. It's not too much, but maybe this potential play is buying it above this 3380 with the stop under 3360. Ideally, I'd like to see a pullback to this 2-day VWAP, digest a little bit more, and then maybe look to take that trade. SONY, just big gapper. You could just see these gaps just all over the place. So it could make it a little bit more difficult to manage the risk, especially overnight, as we just gapping all over the place. So don't love this one. Don't see it as a low risk setup. If you wanted to put a gun to my head to make me trade this, obviously we'll look for that pullback to that 2-day, to that 3-day VWAP premises, get back into that 2-day VWAP, and then ideally see that 2-day, 3-day VWAP, the daily VWAP above the 2-day and 3-day to get us holding this, start to get some consolidation. So I don't see the low risk setup on this SONY. Same thing with here, this gapping all over the place. Don't see the low risk setup. Gapper, don't see the low risk setup. This one I like better. Nice rally up. And you could see after this recent rally, this pulled back and everybody was buying this breakout and it got shooken out here. So this time, and as it's broke out into this new high above 6, it just had that recent rally on earnings of 26%. So the earnings, right? Yeah, 26% in 3 days. So you had that nice shakeout and that quick reclaim, and you could see now how this month-to-date VWAP is starting to really act as that support. So perhaps now we're gapping above our prior week VWAP. So what we'd want to be seeing now is to monitor the breakout of the $6 region, and maybe a stop under this 1589. This is a little bit riskier setup, this 1589 area, but ideally this pulls back to this week to date VWAP prior, gets back above that 6, and then we can put a stop right underneath this 1596, underneath the 5-day moving average. So don't chase this gap, pulls back, get back above the daily VWAP at that $6 level. That fuels us to push into this daily R2. Takes a bring the cash register daily R2 and move that stop up. But ideally, pull back, break above the 6, stop under 1596. KR had this recent pullback to the 50-day moving average after this little correction, aggressive buying. So we have a rally to a new high, and we've been digesting these gains, holding above this 20-day moving average. So we could see here on the daily time frame, one could say that this could be a head, inverse head, shoulder, shoulder. But then on the flip side, as of currently, someone could say it's a head. So we're in a technical torture box and can clearly see the indecision between supply and demand. So what we're seeing recently on the intermediate time frame is this recent rally of 10% in just under 5 days. And now we got this pullback. Same concept near this month-to-date VWAP, right? And now in the pre-market, we're gapping up above that week-to-date VWAP in this 5-day moving average. So perhaps this holds this prior week VWAP, gets back above our daily VWAP, and we trade it back into that 1633. Looks very similar to the MPW chart. So we just talked about how that last rally on this was, about 10.75%. Now it's pulling back to this month-to-date VWAP and gapping above the 5-day moving average. So we're just going to monitor a pullback to this 65.73, set an alert at that VWAP, monitor for price to get back above, and then potentially see if we could spot a higher low, and then potentially take this trade back into 62.33 and look for some potential upside continuation back into these prior highs, maybe the 1650 region, like on the daily chart you could see up in here. So hopefully this was helpful. Good luck trading.